Before VAR, controversial offside decisions were everywhere. World Cups, Champions League finals, league title races. One incorrect call could become football history. VAR improved accuracy, but it created a new problem. Fans now argue over millimeters instead of meters. Some goals get disallowed because a player's shoulder is slightly ahead. Others survive by the smallest possible margin. Technology solved one debate and created another. And that's why offside remains football's most argued about rule. But despite all the complaints, most coaches agree on one thing. Football would be much worse without it. Without offside, teams would simply leave attackers near the goal all game. Defenders would sit deep, space would disappear, tactics would become less interesting. The game would lose much of its strategy. Offside forces players to time their runs perfectly. It rewards intelligence, awareness, and teamwork. Some of football's greatest goals happen because a player starts his...
Football gives attackers the benefit of the doubt. If the attacker and defender are perfectly even, play continues. No offside. That one detail leads to countless goals every season. Now let's test your understanding. Imagine an attacker is running toward goal. Only one defender is left between him and the goalkeeper. A teammate passes the ball. At that exact moment, the attacker's already ahead of that defender. Offside? Yes. Now change one thing. The attacker is exactly level with the defender. Offside? No. Completely legal. Tiny difference? Huge outcome. But here's where things get even more interesting. Being in an offside position isn't actually illegal. Wait, what? Seriously, this is one of the most misunderstood parts of football. A player can stand in an offside position and nothing happens. The referee doesn't automatically stop play. The player must become involved. This means touching the ball, interfering with an opponent, or gaining an advantage from being there. If none of those happen, the game continues. Imagine a player standing offside on the opposite side of the field while the ball is nowhere near him. No problem. Play goes on. Many new fans think the whistle should blow immediately. It doesn't work that way. The player has to affect the play. Now let's talk about one of football's biggest loopholes, the pass back. Imagine an attacker is standing behind the defensive line, looks offside, but the defender accidentally kicks the ball directly to him. Guess what? That's usually legal. Why? Because the ball came from a defender, not a teammate. Many famous...
The decision is locked in the moment the ball leaves the passer's foot. Think of it like a photograph. The referee takes an invisible snapshot the instant the pass is played. That snapshot determines whether the attacker is legal or illegal. And this is where VAR enters the picture. VAR stands for Video Assistant Referee. It's the technology that uses cameras to review important decisions. If you've seen those strange lines being drawn across the screen during matches, that's usually an offside check. Sometimes a goal celebration lasts longer than the goal itself because everyone is waiting for VAR. And occasionally, the decision comes down to a few centimeters. Literally. A shoulder, a knee, a toe. That's why fans lose their minds. Now let's break down the actual offside position. For a player to be offside, 3 things must happen. First, the player must be in the opponent's half of the field. Second, the player must be closer to the goal than both the ball and the second-last defender. Third, the player must be involved in the play. Miss any one of those conditions? No offside. Let's talk about the second-last defender, because that sounds weird. Why second-last? Because the goalkeeper is usually the last defender. Most people think attackers must stay behind the goalkeeper. Not true. The goalkeeper doesn't matter. The rule looks at the second-last defender.
Without the offside rule, attackers could simply stand beside the goal all game and wait for long passes. Matches would become chaotic. Defenders would have almost no chance. So football created a rule to stop players from goal hanging. That's where offside comes in. The rule exists to keep the game fair. But here's where people start getting confused. Most fans think offside means being ahead of the defenders. That's not actually true. You can be ahead of defenders and still be completely legal. The secret is understanding one specific moment. Not where the player receives the ball, not where the player shoots, not where the player scores. The only thing that matters is where the player is when the pass is made. That single moment decides everything. Let's simplify it. Imagine player A passes the ball. At that exact second, player B starts running toward goal. If player B was already too far ahead when the pass happened, that's offside, even if he receives the ball several seconds later.
What is offside? The rule everyone hates explained. If you've ever watched football and suddenly seen thousands of fans screaming at the referee over something called offside, you're not alone. In fact, millions of people watch football for years without fully understanding this one rule. And here's the crazy part. Offside is probably the most hated rule in football. It's responsible for canceled goals, broken hearts, World Cup controversies, and arguments that never seem to end. But today, that's going to change. By the end of this video, you'll understand offside better than most casual fans. And once you see how it works, you'll realize it's actually much simpler than people make it sound. Let's start with one question. Why does offside even exist? Imagine a basketball player standing right next to the hoop the entire game. He never defends, he never runs, he just waits for a teammate to throw the ball to him. Easy points. Pretty boring, right? Football had the same problem.